What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Super Bowl. Final look.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for the Super Bowl. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, let's take a look at the quarterback position. So you can go with either quarterback here. Both of these guys are fantastic quarterbacks. Two of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. Going head to head. Should be an excellent game here. So I like Patrick Mahomes from the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, who have a good defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes has averaged 27.3 fantasy points per game on the season. He gets about 4.1 rush attempts per game, so that gives him a leg up on Tom Brady in terms of his rushing floor, or the rushing yards or the rushing touchdowns that he could score for you. And he scored 29 fantasy points last game and 22 fantasy points the game before that. So he's got easy 30 plus fantasy point upside here, and he's going to be about 66% owned, projected at 29.6 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl. He's 12,000 DraftKings salary, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 56 points scored in this game. Super high scoring game here. This one should be a fun game to watch, and they have this Kansas City Chiefs favored by 3. So I like Patrick Mahomes here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. So you got the young guy in Patrick Mahomes going against the experience in Tom Brady from the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Kansas City Chiefs have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So it looks like Tom Brady has a little bit better of a matchup here, and Tom Brady has averaged 23.3 fantasy points per game on the season. He gets about 2 rush attempts per game. Don't expect a lot of rushing yards for Tom Brady. Very rare that he's going to get into the end zone, although he has been known to do a quarterback sneak if they're on the half-yard line, but I wouldn't count on that. But Tom Brady has scored 20, 22, and 26 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He has elevated his level of play in the playoffs, and I expect no less from him here in the Super Bowl. He's projected at 22.8 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl, and he's 10,000 DraftKings salary. So with the Tampa Bay Bucks expected to be trailing in this game, it could be a passing game script. So I like Tom Brady here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. I like Leonard Fournette from the Tampa Bay Bucks, and he's averaged 10.4 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.5 rush attempts per game and 3.6 pass targets per game. But those season average numbers are a little deceiving because he's been getting many more rush attempts and pass targets throughout the playoffs, and I expect that to continue here into the Super Bowl. So take a look at his last 3 games. He scored 18, 22, and 23 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 12, 17, and 19 rush attempts. And he also got 7, 6, and 4 pass targets in those games. So he was getting over 20 touches per game for the last 3 games. Excellent volume, excellent production. He's going to be about 35% owned, projected at 14.2 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl. He's 7,800 DraftKings salary, so he's got a good matchup. The Kansas City Chiefs give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, so I like Leonard Fournette here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, if you're looking for a value play at the running back position, on DraftKings, take a look at Ronald Jones.
he's way down there at $2,200 DraftKings salary. Now, his season average numbers, he averaged 13.7 rush attempts per game on the season and 3 pass targets per game, and he averaged 14.3 fantasy points per game. But like I said, Leonard Fournette kind of took over the backfield in the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get Ronald Jones involved in this one. In his last 2 games, he got 10 and 13 rush attempts. Now, he only got 1 pass target in those games, so not a lot of pass target volume, but for only $2,200 DraftKings salary, he's going to get 10 plus rush attempts at least, and he could break one. He could score a goal line touchdown, so I think it makes him an interesting value play on DraftKings, and he's projected at 12.5 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl. That projection may be a little bit high considering he just hasn't done much in the playoffs, but again, he's got a good matchup. They're going to share the ball with Ronald Jones. He could break one, score a touchdown, and hit that projection target and smash value. So I like Ronald Jones as a value play here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, Ronald Jones is going to be about 16% owned. So on a single game showdown slate, only 16% owned at such a low salary. He makes an interesting play. It's high risk, high reward, but he doesn't have to score much to hit value. So I like Ronald Jones here.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, now for the Kansas City Chiefs, it looks like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is healthy, so he probably is going to be the feature back here. But last game, Darrell Williams came in. The last 2 games, actually, Darrell Williams has been the guy carrying the ball, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the feature back earlier in the year. He's healthy now, so I'm expecting him to get the majority of the touches. So he averaged 14 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 14 rush attempts per game and 4.2 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 24% owned, and he's projected at 13.7 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl. He's $7,000 DraftKings salary. Now, the Tampa Bay Bucks have a really good run defense. They've given up the second fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. So I'm not big on the running backs for the Kansas City Chiefs. I would prefer to go with their pass catchers. But if you're going to play a running back, I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, Darrell Williams, it could possibly be a trap play here. You just got to wonder how much work he's going to get, if it's going to be a timeshare, or if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to get the bulk of the carries. It's really hard to know how they're going to share the workload here, but Darrell Williams did get 13 rush attempts in the last 2 games, and he got 5 pass targets between the 2 of those games. So he's been getting the bulk of the rush attempts. He's going to be about 21% owned, projected at 7.4 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl, and he's only $5,200 DraftKings salary. So if you're looking to save some salary and you want to get some exposure to a Kansas City running back, take a look at Darrell Williams here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, Le'Veon Bell, he fell out of favor towards the end of the season. He's been non-existent in the playoffs. He is only $800 DraftKings salary. He's only going to be about 4% owned. Super high risk, high reward, but the guy's a good player, and if they decide to involve him in the game plan, you never know what can happen. Just throwing that out there. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. for the Kansas City Chiefs, at the top, I like Tyreek Hill, who's averaged 22.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9 pass targets per game. He even gets an average of 1 rush attempt. He scored 29 and 23 fantasy points in the last 2 games off of 11 and 10 pass targets. He's projected at 21.5 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl. He's 10,400 DraftKings salary. He's got the most upside out of any of these wide receivers on the slate. He can boom. He very rarely busts. And the Tampa Bay Bucks have the 11th worst defense defending opposing wide receivers. So he's got a pretty good matchup here. So I think I'm going to spend up for some Tyreek Hill in my lineups. So I like Tyreek Hill here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Okay, now for the Tampa Bay Bucks, you got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. They're both around the same salary, and these guys are getting about the same pass targets, scoring about the same fantasy points per game. I mean, these guys' stats throughout the season are super close. Chris Godwin averaged 7 targets per game, where Mike Evans averaged 6.8 targets per game, and Chris Godwin averaged 16.2 fantasy points per game, and Mike Evans averaged 16.3 fantasy points per game. Now, both these guys are healthy, so I think they both make fantastic plays here. Tom Brady's going to be slinging that ball left and right, especially if they fall behind in this game. So Chris Godwin is going to be about 41% owned, and Mike Evans is going to be about 35% owned. Now, with Vegas thinking that the Tampa Bay Bucks are going to be trailing in this game, I think it makes a lot of sense to at least play one of these pass catchers here for the Tampa Bay Bucks, either Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. Play one of these wide receivers, and you could even make a lineup where you stack Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans, but my preferred method would be pick one of the two and go from there. So I like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Antonio Brown has been a full participant in practice leading up to the Super Bowl kickoff, so he's going to be in the mix. Now, I definitely prefer either Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, but Antonio Brown is much less expensive, only $6,200 DraftKings salary, and he's averaging 7.6 pass targets per game and 15 fantasy points per game on the season. He's going to be about 21% owned, projected at 10.2 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl. So I think it'd be a mistake to completely fade Antonio Brown. So if you need to save some salary, take a look at Antonio Brown here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the other couple wide receivers for the Kansas City Chiefs that I'm going to be targeting in this game, you got Mecole Hardman and Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins was a full participant on Friday heading into this Super Bowl kickoff, but for me, it's going to be hard to trust Sammy Watkins. We haven't seen him out on the field for quite a while. We know Mecole Hardman has been performing on his limited targets that he's gotten the past couple of games. He scored 12 and 10 fantasy points in the last 2 games off of 3 and 4 pass targets. Mecole Hardman is going to be about 15% owned, and Sammy Watkins is going to be about 16% owned. Now, Mecole Hardman is $5,600 DraftKings salary, and Sammy Watkins is $4,200 DraftKings salary. So for me, I prefer Mecole Hardman, especially because the ownership is going to be about the same between these two players. I just feel like I know what I'm getting with Mecole Hardman, whereas Sammy Watkins is a little bit more of a question mark. So I like Mecole Hardman here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Okay, let's take a look at the tight end position. Of course, guys, the tight end stud of the slate. You gotta spend up for him, but he's well worth it. It's Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs, who's averaging 22.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9.7 pass targets per game. He scored 40 and 28 fantasy points in his last 2 games off of 15 and 11 pass targets. He's going to be about 51% owned, and the Tampa Bay Bucks give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. So I like Travis Kelce here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now for the Tampa Bay Bucks tight ends, Cameron Brate did not practice on Friday, so that kind of opens up some interest for Rob Gronkowski, who's only $3,000 DraftKings salary, getting an average of 4.8 pass targets per game, scoring an average of 9.5 fantasy points per game, and he's only going to be about 12% owned, projected at 9 fantasy points here in the Super Bowl. So I think Rob Gronkowski makes a lot of sense as a value play, especially because Vegas thinks the Tampa Bay Bucks are going to be trailing in this game, and because Cameron Brate didn't practice, could get some extra pass targets. You know the Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski connection, especially in the Super Bowl where these guys are going to elevate their play to the absolute top. So I just think you can't go wrong with that $3,000 salary. Now don't go all in on Rob Gronkowski. He could very easily have 3 fantasy points off of 2 pass targets. But if he gets into the end zone, he's definitely going to hit or exceed value here at only $3,000 DraftKings salary. And he's got a great matchup. The Kansas City Chiefs give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. So I like Rob Gronkowski here versus the Kansas City Chiefs.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.